Hey, everybody. So glad to spend time in community with each of you tonight. I think we've all had a jar laying around at our house that's been really hard to open. So put in the chat what you do when you have a jar that you just can't open and you turn it and you turn it and use all your might and it just won't open. And this is really delicious, magical. This is a magical jar because it's the Walden Farms pancake syrup. But when I can't open a jar, I like Jennifer, bang it on the counter. That's one thing you can do. Run hot water under it. You can give it to somebody else. I gave a jar to my daughter who's 6, who opened it for me before. We're all kinds of different options. And so tonight, one of the things we're going to be talking about is what we call loving pressure. And I think the word pressure has gotten a bad rap, right? When we think about pressure, we think about being stuck under a pile of rocks and I don't know, not suffocating, not being able to breathe, right? Like the sound of pressure isn't good, but loving pressure is good. So loving pressure is like the jar that we try to turn. And, when we get frustrated, we put it down and then we try again. And eventually it opens, or we pass it to somebody else and it opens, or we bang it on the table and then it opens. And so I think a lot of hard conversations, a lot of things that we do within coaching can be related to a jar. I know for my Coach Explore, when I first became a coach, the person that opened the lid of my jar was Susan Pallas, which doesn't say anything about Dee, right? We know Dee is an incredible leader. She's created this massive team, but it was Susan Pallas that needed to be the one to open my jar. And so I think it's important that we remember, as we are creating conversations and working with people, that we want to provide loving pressure. We want to use our heart and our intuition, but there's beautiful, wonderful, magical stuff inside of people, like is inside of this Walden Farms pancake syrup, right? And so if I just stopped trying to open it because it was hard, man, my pancakes would be really bland, right? But it's worth it to keep trying. So I thought of that analogy kind of randomly, and I shared it with Dee, and she's like, oh, we need to share it with the team. So I hope that it serves you in some way to just be thinking about, okay, loving pressure. If I were a jar of Walden Farm syrup, how would I open? How would I, be open to the possibilities? All right, Dee, that's all I got.
No, that was awesome. And Walden Farms syrup is the bomb. I didn't discover that until like year 11 in coaching. Somebody held out on me. But I think, so often, like you said, Meg, that it feels hard, right? It feels hard to sometimes face some of the things in our business, or to do the things that could really make a difference in somebody else's life. And if I look back at every stage of my growth in this business, it was because somebody was gently redirecting my thoughts, right? Because we have all sorts of thoughts in here, and we create what's called stories. And when we think about we're going to talk quite a bit about the topic of fear, but Jim Dethmer, a lot of us heard him speak from the 15 levels of conscious leadership. He said, there's something out there, and I love the analogy they use, is it a fact or is it a story? Right? So, let's just do this before we get started. And honestly, we're going to want to make this call more interactive than we typically do. Pop in the chat, what are your top 2 fears in this business? Could be talking to somebody, approaching them about the business or the program, or having a hard conversation with them. What would be, let me just kind of get a feel for what you guys are thinking using the chat. Your top 2 fears. Losing the business. Okay. Feeling like a salesperson. Failing myself, driving people away. Worried somebody is judging me or thinking what I'm doing is dumb or silly. Okay. Failing others, not being a good leader. Judgment. Okay. Okay. I'm glad. I mean, this is really honest stuff. Yeah. And sometimes, and I'm just going to kind of jump to this, having the business fall apart sometimes our fears, like it might be the fear of having a harder conversation with somebody, is not necessarily, we might tell ourselves, well, I don't want to come on too strong. I don't want to upset them. I don't want to, and we're saying it's about them, but sometimes our biggest fear is we're afraid they're going to go away. Right? We're afraid if we push them, we're going to fulfill that fear of the business going away. And we don't want to be any part of that. So there's lots and lots of layers to this. But what Jim Dethmer and the Conscious Leadership Group say is a fact is something like a video camera could record it and it could be proven in a court of law, right? It is true. It is true. The story is actually how we interpret the fact or what we actually think may happen. So fact or story is always a really good a process to go through with it. So we were kind of thinking about this tonight, like, where are we a scaredy cat? And we kind of thought, Meg and I were working on what are some of the most common conversations we're having with coaches lately, and kind of came up with 4 of them. So, and one of them was listed here. And Meg, this was the one of fear of selling, or that we're just trying to get them or keep them.
The other one I saw, Dee, was the fear of being an annoyance. So I was thinking that could be a really good one to start. So I'm curious, Kim, I think you were the one that shared having a fear of being annoying. Would you be willing to step in and kind of share with us a little bit more about that fear?
Oh my gosh, sure. I'm being put on the spot, right? So I guess I feel like I don't want somebody to ever feel like I'm being pushy or, like I always think when I make posts, like, oh my gosh, people have to think like, should she just cut it out already? Like, what is she doing? She keeps putting all these posts out there and it's just totally annoying. And, would get under people's skin, I guess.
And what is behind the fear of annoying them? So what I hear you saying is the fear is that you're going to be putting posts out there on social media and they're going to be like, oh, there's Kim again doing her posts. What are you worried about? What does the fear mean about you? What's underneath that fear? Because fear oftentimes is just noise. It's telling us some kind of story. What is that story for you?
I guess for me, it would be, so I am somebody who is a people pleaser always in everything I do. And so for me, I don't want to offend somebody. I don't want to turn them off. I wouldn't want them to stop following me or communicate, you know what I mean? Like communicating with me or, I don't know, being connected, right? I wouldn't want it to sever any kind of connection or relationship I have with people.
Yeah, to have a negative outcome.
Mm-hmm.
It's so relatable. I think so many of us have been there. So thank you for saying the things that sometimes we don't want to say, especially out loud on calls like this. So thank you for being brave. And I'm just curious, as you're just articulating this beautifully, by the way, do you feel like this is that it's truth, or do you think it's a story that people
I think
are
it's
annoyed
very
by?
silly when I say it out loud because I do know, there are people who reach out and say, oh my gosh, thanks so much for sharing. I watch your stuff. I really appreciate it. You've motivated me. But I also just in my head, what I say to myself, I know that it's probably not true. Right. And so I feel silly saying it out loud, but.
I love that you can identify that it's a story. So whenever I'm telling myself a story, which we all do because we're human, right? What else could be true? And I think you've named quite a few things.
Yeah, I think though, I think other things that could be true is that I'm providing hope to people, encouragement to people, inspiration, educating people when I'm sharing, posts with facts about nutrition or health or whatever.
Mhm. Beautiful. That's beautiful. So providing hope, encouragement, education, providing a gift to the world. So what if you have 90 people out of 100 who are just eating everything up, and you've got 10 that it's not their jam? Is
Yeah,
it
well,
worth it?
I would say it's definitely something I'd keep pushing forward, because it's worth it for those 90 to continue to learn and educate and be inspired and have hope for a better future, for sure.
I love that. Thank you for sharing.
Sure.
Can I tell you something embarrassing? I
I
was a
guess.
little annoyed by Dee's post when I wasn't healthy.
Mm,
I was like, oh, there's our Fitbit, there's our, but it didn't say anything about Dee. It said something about me not being happy with where I am. So we're stuck in such a beautiful reflective split space. So thank you for being inspiring and sharing with us tonight and sharing with Minnie on social media. There's a lot of love for you in the chat.
thank you.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that was awesome. And Lucy and Vicky, you guys both shared like somebody in your life said something and you actually thanks for sharing that, Lucy, that you scaled back, right? Like somebody said they were pushy on a follow-up and they scaled back. And this might be like a silly analogy, but one thing I learned, I used to teach dance fitness. And so the room would be full. So you always had your front row people who were the most vocal, right? And then it would go back and then, you know what I mean, all the way back in the class. And so the front row would always try to dictate and it wasn't just me, it was any leader. And so we were always taught, don't teach to the front row, because we would hear somebody going, well, it's too loud, or you can take that one out, or we all hate this one. But at a routine, but at the end of the class, the back of the room and the middle was gushing with love and affirmation and, oh my God, that was fantastic. So that if we always did what the front row wanted, it would be catering to just the front row. And I will tell you something that deeply hurt me was I had a friend that did the program. She did great. She became a coach. She didn't do so great. She left. She has subsequently gained all her weight back, but early in the journey, and this is when I was growing the most rapidly, like when my heart opened to, wow, people need this business. She told somebody else who was very important to me, she's like, I don't know what happened to Dee, but oof, she has drank the Kool-Aid. And it was like a knife in my heart, because there was part of me, I'm a human, right? And I was like, did I? Like, is that what people think? But look we've helped 20,000 people, you guys. 20,000, over 20,000 people we've helped. I get goosebumps. I get actually emotional about that. I didn't even planning to bring that up. But had I let that stop me, it rattled me. It absolutely rattled me, but I didn't let it stop me. And I'm glad that I didn't, right? That I didn't. So one of the most common fears, and we've talked about this on other calls or hesitations, is to talk about the topic of coaching, to potentially even invite people to come to a sneak peek into coaching or a health and hope night, because we can be fearful of the messaging that's going to come across, and is it going to upset somebody if it's around coaching. So we have a brave coach that volunteered to speak tonight, and she's taken time away from one of her children's sports games. So Jennifer Davis, you're out there. Can you just share a little bit about kind of where you are with this and where this fear that rumbles inside you?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I hope it's not too loud with background noise, but I'm watching the 10U baseball game tonight. So, but I was talking on one of our calls recently with a group of coaches, and I mentioned after the Health and Hope night that I felt like it was really heavy on mentioning coaching. And I tried to think about, why I felt that way. And I actually went back and listened to the call today to see how often did it really come up, or how often, was it mentioned, or why did I even feel that way? And it was funny. It was less than I thought. So I think when I love the Health and Hope Nights. I love any call that I can listen into because I gain something from it every single time. But I think on the Health and Hope Nights, I'm always thinking of it of, if I invited a new client, what would their impression be? What would they be thinking as people were sharing their stories? And I do love the stories of people sharing their hope and how they lost the weight and how they felt better. And in fact, Megan and Dr. Joe's call was fantastic. The stories that were shared, the success that was shared. But for whatever reason, whenever the word coaching or business comes up, I kind of like tense up a little bit because I'm like, oh, if I invited so-and-so, what are they thinking? Are they thinking I'm trying to like loop them in, like you said, Dee, about drinking the Kool-Aid? Like, am I trying to convince them to do something that maybe they're not ready for? They're just a client. They're just trying to lose weight and get healthy. But the reality is those calls are all encompassing. They really do touch on every component of the program. And I think if I listen to it with an open mind as like a new client, I would see that as well. But maybe as a coach, when you have, clients under you, you're just worried about how that comes across. Because I'm also always thinking about it like, well, if it's somebody that I didn't invite, I want to send them the recording. And so I always want to make sure that it's something, relevant to them. And, but I do just get nervous of bringing that up. And in fact, one of the things that was mentioned, that I guess, I don't know if Dr. Joe mentioned it or one of the people that shared, but they called it a side hustle. And I always just kind of get nervous because I feel like that's looped in with, the MLMs and whatever. The reality is it's 2023. Things are different, right? Business can be different. I can be flexible and be out here talking while my kid's playing baseball. I can take a call or call a client while my daughter's in ballet. Like, it's so flexible for working moms and people who want time freedom. And so like, why would I shy away from that? But it's still just one of those things that just for whatever reason, I just get nervous about and I get tensed about.
Mhm. Yeah, I can so relate. Thanks for your honesty around that. I honestly had a huge block around offering coaching probably for about 4 years. I was a frontline only coach. I truly had those same thoughts, Jen. I would say, these people just came to lose weight and now I'm offering a business. Like what? So I guess the question is, and I like as you're processing it out loud, kind of like Kim did, at the end of the day, Dan Bell calls it the calm. When you know what you know, what you know. Like, I know that I'm not going to stop coaching or my world is not going to end if they don't say yes to coaching or they don't like the idea of coaching. What I do know is, and I will tell you hands down, 12 years of coaching, is that them becoming a coach, even if they help one person or two people, is their insurance for their future. And without it, they are at great risk. In my thought, because what I've seen of gaining their weight back or never getting to the goal. So that's the hard part, I think, is kind of getting over that, because what we're doing is we're also putting our thoughts into their heads because we don't know what they're going to think. Right? We have no idea. I had one person become a coach because she went to it was the Wednesday night calls Optavia used to have. And she said, they're talking about this coaching thing. Like, what is that? I had never brought it up. She was a 6-figure bank executive. I thought, no way would she want that. Right? My thoughts, not hers. So, so I appreciate your honesty about that. And I'm hoping you're seeing these comments that we're afraid. And I think I guess, what is your biggest fear? That it would scare them off, or?
Yeah, or that they would just feel like, I don't know, like a cringy feeling or something. Like you said, like looping them into the business. But I will say, the longer I have been coaching and the more that I do share it with people, the more comfortable I get. Because like you said, I do know the benefit that it's added to my life, and I know the benefit that it's added to other people's lives. And so the argument would be, why not? Why not share it? Who cares if they say no or no thanks or not right now or whatever. But I definitely am getting more comfortable about it, but it's still, just one of those things that makes me nervous.
And it takes some time. I mean, did you ever have fear around the program when you first started coaching, like wondering like, oh, are they going to like these fuel lanes? Like you're like, and the program's so great. And it's like, yeah. And we have these fuel lanes, and then you're like vomiting to say like why the fuel lanes are so great. Like, did you ever go anything like that or worried about the price?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Worry about everything. And in fact, I still kind of have a problem with worrying about the fuelings because I'm like, oh, nobody's going to like this food. They're going to think that this is just, junk or whatever. And then I'm like, this serves me so well. Like I love the 6 or 7 fuelings that I've kind of narrowed it down to that I really like. And so I'm like, why am I thinking like this? All the other food in the world is junk. What is it about? Like this is actually good for you. So you're right. I think just building that confidence and same, like you said, with the price, once you realize it's worth every penny. And to somebody, when you hear them say like, I lost 50 pounds and this changed my life, who cares if it's 400 and whatever dollars? You couldn't, like
Best
somebody had
investment
said
ever.
before, yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter what the price was. It absolutely improved their life and their health.
Yeah. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, we know, like, yeah, was it my first choice to eat, a bar or oatmeal that was nothing like oatmeal that I was used to? Like, that was not my first choice, but it was the solution to my problem, and I think that's the same thing as like anybody who steps into coaching is we know better off, right? And so but it takes some time to kind of wrap around that and really start to come also to a place of starting to separate program and coaching and realize it is this whole gift that we're putting out, and then they can choose what they want from it. So thank you for being so honest around it.
Yeah, definitely. I think it helps us all. So thanks for having the topic.
You bet. Meg, you want to go on to the next one?
Absolutely. So one of the fears that we saw in the chat was the fear of selling. And I know we hear that comes up a lot with people, right? That we have this fear of selling. I'm wondering, do we have somebody brave out there who wouldn't mind sharing if they are afraid of selling? We're in a very intense poker game right now. And
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
Dr. Robin, perfect. Okay. So tell
Yeah.
us more.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more that it's just on my mind, that idea, right? And I know that I am trying to be more intentional about focusing on the connections and building relationships, and moving away from getting the sale, right? Or like getting the client, right? Like I'm moving away from that, but it's still like a little birdie on my shoulder. Like this is salesy, or and I don't know. I mean, it's my stuff. I recognize that it's my stuff. And I think that I was talking with my coach about this yesterday. I think part of it for me is just some of the negative comments that I've had people in my life make, just like even early on my journey, without knowing anything about the program. Like, oh, you're being brainwashed, or like, oh, like just things that kind of stick with you, right? And then just sort of, I think, prompt me to subconsciously feel a little bit hesitant and not wanting it to become or feel salesy. And I know that part of it is posturing too. And there are some calls and interactions where I feel like I know I'm being confident and I'm speaking from the heart and talking about how this has changed my life and how it absolutely could change someone else's life. And then other calls where I notice that I'm being more hesitant and maybe feeling like I'm trying to sell it more.
Yeah.
But so I feel like I'm still just trying to also find my balance with how to do that. There's lots of layers, clearly.
Lots of layers. And I love how you're choosing to navigate through them, and choosing to ask questions and find mentoring and talk through it. I think it speaks volumes. So thank you for sharing and being real with us. Tamara, I see your hand up. So is this a fear that rings true for you?
It is. And then also something I kind of got at Launch to Global that helped me a little bit.
Yeah.
But I've always had that fear of just kind of selling, or how people would take it if I just wanted them to know that I was being genuine. And this kind of relates to what Dee said. I had one of my best friends that knows me better than anybody else we've been friends since middle school. And she sent me a message and she was like, I really want to let you know that I think your post might turn people off, because you're always posting, these pictures and these, trips and everything. And thankfully I had gone to Launch to Global because I really listened to everything she said. And I was like, she's saying this because it's triggering something with her,
Mm.
not the way I'm putting, because I could go and back up like all these people that I've helped and have said positive things, and I know where my heart is. So, but so that was hard. So, but I knew I was coming from a good place. But one thing they said in our group that really helped is just not to take it personally. And, they did the whole coffee analogy, someone doesn't like coffee. They don't want coffee now. You don't get your feelings hurt, or the waitress doesn't get her feelings hurt when you don't want the ketchup. It's
Yeah.
something clicked, and I finally realized not to take it personally.
Mm.
So
Beautiful. So hard, especially for recovering people pleasers, right? Hard to
Yeah.
not take it personally, but so much freedom is on the other side if we can
Mhm.
can manage that and get to the other
Yeah.
side of that. So anytime you have this fear that might come up for you, this fear of selling, I would just encourage you to be curious around it and ask yourself, wonder what that means. Wonder if this is truth, or what if there's a story in here? One of our coaches on our team had a fear of having people continue buying fuelings and maintenance, because she said, I don't want people to think they have to. I don't want to think that they have to sell, like that I'm selling them just forever and ever and ever. And as we dug into that fear, what we kind of uncovered was that, hey, maybe we give them options, but if ordering each month gives them quick grab and go options that are nutritionally balanced and helps them keep their weight off, and it comes every month, so they don't have to think about it, so that they don't run by Dunkin' Donuts. Like, if that's in their best interest, why wouldn't we offer it as a solution? So just something to be curious around and something to think about and continue the conversation on. Dee, I think we have another fear we wanted to tackle.
We do. And I wanted to address one thing in the comments. I think it was Amanda said, I don't know that I'll ever feel comfortable talking around this stuff. And you know what? It's normal to be uneasy, and it is uncomfortable. And kind of like I was saying to Jen, like, did you at one point feel like you were kind of fumbling around the fuelings, but does it come out smoother now? As with anything, you're building new muscles, right? You're building new things. Like, it will get easier with practice, right? We move through fear with practice, but we're not going to be experts, right? We're going to be beginners. And quite honestly, like, having hard conversations, like, I don't go to bed at night hoping to have a hard conversation the next day. Like, I would like to avoid it like the plague, but I have to think of the best interest of the other person and come from that place of love and be willing to have the uncomfortable. And even as long as I've coached, I still can get uncomfortable offering coaching to somebody. I can still get even sometimes fumble over the program, but I still do it. Right. So it's kind of like having a hard conversation with your kids or your spouse or something. It's never easy, but it's worth it to be through that uncomfortable. So, I had a conversation last week with Jordan Rosa, and we were really talking about, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about radical authenticity and really kind of coming to truth about where we are with our journey, and then how can we use that to help other people. And one thing Jordan had talked about was that she and I'm hoping you'll share some of your story, Jordan, was that this was leading you actually to have some confidence, to have some harder conversations by tapping into what you've been going through. So I'm excited to have you share.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. So 2023 has been really crazy for us. And the best way I can describe it is just life got really real. We've been in this prolonged transition period with moving, and we've lost a lot of family members in a very short period of time. They were, older, not doing well, ill, that kind of thing. So it wasn't necessarily a surprise, but loss is never like fun or easy, and just some other dynamics shifting in our lives. And so what I ended up doing was kind of hiding and kind of pulling back because I just felt like I could not care about one more thing, because all the big things seemed so big and so heavy. And so another thing that happened is my weight started creeping up again. And before I knew it, I had gained like 15 pounds back. And so, at the end of April, it's like I kind of had the fog lift, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's almost May. of 2023. Like I cannot keep waiting for things to settle down to start, doing my normal routines again. And so I talked with my husband and I decided, you know what, I'm going to truly like get back into a good fat burn, commit to getting this weight off. I talked to him and he like decided to do it with me, which was a huge deal because he just didn't want to. And honestly, like that allowed me to authentically reach out to my clients and some of my coaches that, we had been like touching base here and there, but just not anything consistent. And so to be able to reach out to them and be like, hey, I would love to like talk and see how you're doing. And then open the conversation of like, hey, this is how my life has been these last few months. I've put some weight back on. I'm starting tomorrow on 5 and 1. Would you want to do it with me? And it was so refreshing to have just like it really was like a friend to friend. And a lot of these people are like friends of mine, right? Like we have either developed a relationship through Optavia or we were friends before. But it just was like, here I am. I'm a real person. Here's all my stuff. Like I'm not this, picture perfect health coach that I felt like I had to uphold this image, right? And I had several people get back into fat burn with me, which is just so fun. We've reconnected. And one of the things that I have done is some of these people had like false starts, where they, try to get into fat burn, but then everything blows up and they just can't. And then they'll go weeks without talking to me, whatever. And so what I started doing was asking like, why is it going to be this time? What is going to be better? And just continuing to dig, 5 to 7 times, like, okay, but why now? Why is, it going to work this time? And one person in particular that I thought about, she was still doing all the things that she said she wanted to do with being at a healthy weight. And I was like, what is going to make it different? Because anyone could look at your life and say, you're doing all the things that you say you want to do. And so it really allowed us to get to another level where she could open up to me in a different way. And in just thinking about all of this, it's almost like I was reflecting to my clients and my coaches what was on the inside. So when I was struggling and feeling like I couldn't do anything else, so were they. But when I turned it and I said, you know what, I need help. I need you. Like I can't do this by myself. Then they were able to show up also and kind of go hand in hand with me. So I know we're at time, so I want to be respectful of your time, but I hope that's kind of what you were looking for, Dee.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It can be, have a client. Well, one, it's scary to call somebody and be like, hey, be real. I'm going to do this. Would you like to do it with me? Right. That's a big fear. And having those kind of hard conversations with clients, right? Asking, like, it could be super easy when a client wants to come back to be like, oh, let's go. Let's get you signed up. We'll start on Monday and whatever. But having that harder conversation to really help them, it just benefits them. So thanks for showing what's possible when we do that. And so good. Well, y'all, this is recorded. If you want to come back, share with your team members. I think that these common fears, like you're just really, thanks for being vulnerable in the chat, really showing that this is common, but it's working through this. It's going to be the breakthrough for you and be the breakthrough for other people. Is it for everyone? No, but it will be for somebody. And we've got 60 something of us that, somebody, that gentle pressure of somebody else has helped us. One thing as we're closing that we are excited to announce is we have missed our community time, our immediate intimate community time with Eat, Live, and Be Healthy. We are still supporting 100% the Monday night calls, and that is going to be the weekly, but we have decided to do a monthly Eat, Live, and Be Healthy Zoom for you guys and your clients. That will be the first Thursday of every month at 8 p.m. So the next one is a week from Thursday on June 1st. We'll post about it. And it's going to be staying the course over the summer. So, so excited about that. Thanks for your continual feedback and letting us know what you want and your clients need, and continue to help us promote that. So that's what I got. Meg, you got anything else as we're wrapping up? Okay, well, let's head over to the Monday night call. So good to see you guys. Thank you to everybody who shared. Love you, and we'll see you during the week in the Facebook group.